Right. Good evening, everyone. So, tonight we're going to do this. Let's just call it a discussion in two parts. Like I said, it's just an insight to what Agile project management is all about. So it's more of an introduction, and it's going to be in two parts. So, we'll look into a bit of the approach itself, and then we'll look also at the person aspect. So the approach aspect to Agile project management is what we're going to do first. I'll be taking that part. And then when we get to the person part, Bola, my colleague, will be taking that part also. So for tonight, we'll be just having a brief discussion into what a project is, what project management means, what Agile means, and then what Agile project management means. So what we did was kind of break it down rather than have projects, Agile project management, just break it down for the benefit of those that are hearing project or project management or Agile project management for the first time. And then we'll just have an understanding of what APM means. We look at some key elements, the phases you have for that project approach. We'll look at some benefits, and then we'll go to the person aspect of it, which is the second part, looking at the skills of a project, Agile project manager, the responsibilities, the tools, other titles that role can be called. We'll look at some salary skills, certification, active job search, and then Bala would be giving us some very good advice on how to journey through um, this particular role. Okay, so I'm going to start off with, like I said, some brief definitions, if you can put it that way, of some of these key terms. So we want to look at project. What does project, what does it mean for us? So it's a temporary and organized effort defined by objectives aimed at achieving a unique result. Results such as product, service, or an outcome, so to say, given within given constraints such as time, budgets, and resources. Okay, so what what that means is that there are some key components when you talk about a project. And some of the key components you're looking at is temporary in nature. Okay, so it's not something that is indefinite. It just keeps going on and doesn't have a defined timeline. So it's temporary in nature. It has a beginning, a defined beginning, and also as an end. So that's why we said it's temporary in nature. And then the unique output we're looking at is for every project, there's something that you need to deliver. There's a unique thing, there's a unique outcome that has to be delivered. It could be product, it could be service, it could be anything, an outcome, so to say, is why you run a project. There is a purpose, there is a vision, and the outcome is the unique outcome is that vision you want to see, so to say, at the end of it, the tangible value you want to see to that vision or that how will I put it now, that plan that you have in place. So we have that as one of the components of a project, and then you have a defined scope and objective. So your project is not something that is running very, very, very wild. You have different aspects to it. You just say, oh, this is what we want to do. It has to be within a particular scope that can be focused on, that can be tracked within a time, and there's an objective regarding that, that plan that you have. What do you want to achieve with that thing? There is a need that brought about a project that needs to be that you need to carry out, and those are your objectives that you want to see with the defined scope of what needs to be done within a particular time, specific goals that needs to be achieved, so to say, for that project. That's another key component. And then the last one is your specific constraints. Okay, so for every project, no matter how small it is, because it has a defined beginning and an end, there's some constraints to it. There's time constraint. Would we be able to deliver to the target, to the deadline in place? There is constraint of budget. This is what has been budgeted for. This is what whosoever has this project is planning to to spend on it? Are we able to keep within that budget? Those constraints are there. You have constraint of resources. Do you have enough resources to meet the project, to run it from the beginning to the end? You're thinking about the quality, the time we have. Are we able to deliver quality to this project at the time, for the time that we have? Those are some of the key components that you have regarding when you talk about a project. So you have an understanding better now when we talk about a project, what it means and what defines a project, so to say. So an example is you have, I'm sure you've heard about software development project, you've heard about construction project, you hear about the building roads, the building bridges and all that. They have defined timeline. There's a time that they need to start, there's a time that they need to end the project. There are marketing campaign projects, event management projects, just to mention some few of types of projects, that we're talking about, just to give you that understanding to it. So we now want to look at what project management is all about. We've just defined what a project is. Okay, so what is a project management? So project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, techniques, just to name some, a few, to meet the requirements of a project. We talked about there is a purpose for a project. There's a goal that you want to achieve. The things you need to apply in order to get that outcome achieved are the management aspect, are the ways you manage that project so that you get what you want, to meet the requirement, to meet the purpose for that project at the end of the day. And this involves planning. You need to plan, you need to organize, you need to direct things, make sure things are directed in the right and the proper and appropriate way. You need to control resources. When we were talking about the constraints, we made mention of the resources. So you need to control the resources. It could be the budget itself is a resource. It could be human resources. It could be tools. You need to be able to control them to achieve that specific goal that you have within those constraints that we've talked about, within the time that you have to deliver, within the budget that you have to deliver, within the scope that you have to deliver also. Okay, so the main objective of any project management is the completion of that project effectively and also efficiently, ensuring that you achieve the goal at the end of it, and while balancing, all those things we've talked about, the cost, the time, the scope, while balancing them into space. So everything has to be balanced. Everything needs to work together. That is how a project is managed. Okay, so quickly, we also want to look at what do we mean when we say agile. Okay, so for those that were present when we're doing the introduction to Scrum Mastery, we did do a bit of kind of an explanation of meaning of agile for those that are hearing it for the first time. Okay, so it's an iterative, flexible approach that emphasizes collaboration, customer feedback, and small frequent deliveries. So you're managing this project and you want to look at what approach are I going to use to manage it. And we're looking at, okay, we're using Agile to manage it. So that means while managing it, we're doing it using an iterative approach. We're managing it, being flexible in our approach. We're emphasizing collaboration, communication, collaboration, teamwork, being a team player in this management, customer feedback, and then doing it in small chunks, doing it in small parts and in small chunks, and delivering as frequently as we go along. So for agile project management, it focuses on managing a work or a project, like I said, by breaking it down into smaller manageable parts. You're adjusting as you go based on the feedbacks that you're getting from the customer. You're learning and you're delivering results quickly. Okay, so Agile itself thrives in dynamic environment where requirements may change frequently. So this is what we started with. The customer is feeding back and he said, you know what, I want to change to this and all that. The ability to be able to respond to that change quickly, respond to it faster, bring about the adjustment. That is what agility is all about. And that is what agile project management approach, thrives to bring. That is the highlight, I can say, and the edge that agile project management approach has us to different kind of project management approach that we have in place. So we can say then that Agile project management is a flexible, iterative approach of managing projects that emphasizes collaboration, customer feedback, and small frequent deliveries to work. And if I had just, go ahead to define what Agile project management is without giving you what a project means, what managing a project means, what Agile itself is, with those three definitions, are you able to combine them together to know what Agile project management in itself is all about? Okay, so I have a question. Why Agile? Why do we have to use Agile approach? Why not use any other, project approach to project management approach? Why do we pick Agile and all that? Okay, so the one thing we need to understand is that we're picking Agile because it originated as a response to the limitations of waterfall methodology. Okay, so waterfall methodology is the traditional method of project management. It's not saying that waterfall is wrong. Waterfall has its good parts. There are some projects that are well suited to waterfall. They thrive and they succeed with waterfall, but not all projects. Okay, so for those limitations, for those projects, is that waterfall is a limitation too. That is what brought about Agile project management approach. It's a response to those limitations because it offers more flexibility, as I've said. It's the iterative process to it that can be better suited to those projects. That is why the birth, if I can put it that way, of Agile project management approach came into being. Okay, so while we're not delving, elaboratively into the discussion of the history of Agile tonight, it's good to note that making use of Agile approach to manage a project involves having knowledge and understanding of its values and principles. There is no way you use this approach without understanding its values, without understanding some of its principles. And those are the things we just want to briefly breeze through tonight. Like I said, we're not going deep into them, but just to breeze through them. Okay, so like I said earlier on, it's a response to some limitations, and it's those responses is generally referred to out there as the Agile Manifesto. Okay, so and this brought about 4 values that were discussed. There were kind of, if I can say, the outcome of that manifesto, of that response that we're talking about, and we'll just quickly look at it. So on the left hand side, well, left to me really, of the of the slide, you could see where we have the Agile values. So those are the 4 values of Agile. The first one says individuals and interaction over processes and tools. And what that means is, while processes and tools are important, yeah, the collaboration between the team members is more critical to the project success. So the project succeeds more with individuals interacting, where there is interaction between the individuals that are involved, you get more value. That is what that is trying to explain. And then the second one is working software over comprehensive documentation. Okay, so the idea that the software should be usable, should be functional, is more valuable, while documentation is still necessary. We're not saying it's not necessary. We're just saying that a working and a usable, functional software takes priority, so to say, over the documentation. And then the third one is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Being open to changes based on customer feedback rather than sticking rigidly to initial agreement. So we don't want to negotiate, oh, this is what the contract is, we're sticking to that contract and all that. Rather than say that you want to collaborate, you want to interact and, with the customer, get their feedback, because at the end of the day, you're building it for them. So get their feedback, make adjustment based on their feedback, so that whatever you're building meets and satisfies their expectation. That is the third value we have in place. And then we're looking at responding to change over following a plan. So plan are useful also, but they shouldn't stop the team from improving or adjusting to the project. Okay, so there are feedbacks, like we said, that are coming in from the customer. You're quick. I talked earlier on about agility to respond to change that are coming back. We're not sticking to the plan that this was the plan from initial set, and that's what we've done, and that's what you're going to take and everything. But responding to the changes, those are the values that Agile project management approach brings to project managing a project, and those are the highlights. Those are the responses, the positive and the good responses that comes from Agile project management. And these 4 values further expanded and brought about the 12 principles guiding Agile project management approach. Now, the first one talks about, the primary goal is that you have to deliver valuable software early and frequently to keep the customer satisfied, to keep the customer happy, to keep them engaged. So for every sprint circle, we call that's a circle. The sprint or the iterative is a circle. So for every circle, whatsoever is the value that is added to that product is an incremental value. Over in the value, we talked about a working software. So whatsoever is added, is it a feature, is it a functionality that is added to that project or to that product, is a valuable one, and it brings satisfaction to the customer. And then we're looking at Agile embracing change at any stage. We're talking about changing the requirements. It embraces change at any stage, allowing flexibility to meet evolving customer needs, even if it comes late in the project. It's still, that's what we talk about, the responding to the changes. You're responding to the changes. Okay, so there's also regularly provide small and usable piece of product. We're talking about frequent delivery. So they're small, they're coming, and they are incremental value that is being added that the customers are satisfied with as they go along. Also, quickly, we want to talk about the regular communication. Okay, so there is no way the customer feedback. The only way they feedback to you is through communication. So there has to be continuous communication between the customers, between the stakeholders, between the developers themselves, to ensure that everyone is aligned and the product keeps meeting expectation, as we're building it. There has to be trust and support the team that they would get the job done. Okay, so the only way you get them motivated is when you trust them, when you support them, and you give them the independence to be able to do what they need to do, that they would get the job done. That's the motivating the individuals that are working. Also, there's direct communication. That's the face-to-face meeting. There is direct communication is preferred because it promotes clarity and quick problem solving. When we come together to, collaborate together and everything, we're able to solve things easily. We're able to solve things faster. That when you send messages and you're waiting for the person to come back, or you send a message that is misunderstanding, you're not, if the communication is not clear. But when you're face to face, you're able to, clarify things, and then things moves on quickly and fast, and we're able to also quickly resolve issues also. That is, there we're talking about progress is measured by the software usability. So you're looking at the measured output. What is being added, the value being added, it has to be, like I've said it earlier on, it has to be working, it has to be usable. When you provide something or you produce something that is not usable to the customer, then really it's useless. And that is why that collaboration and that interaction with them has to be continuous, has to happen as frequently, as possible. And then the working at the pace, the team has to work at a pace that they can sustain over time, and that prevents them burning out, and it ensures steady progress also. So there has to be sustainable development process, and that's why we're doing it in bits. Agile does it in bits, iterative, like we said. You come together, you plan, you do that. There are a lot of events, ceremonies, or meetings, let me put it that way, that happens during the process of development, that helps the team to meet regularly, do bits in small breakable parts, do that, increase the value as you go along. You finish that, the customer is happy, you go back, pick the next bit that needs to be done, your plan, you have daily meetings, daily stand-up, we call it, where you plan things. This is what we need to do at this time. We go and do it and everything, and it goes along. And at the beginning of every circle, also, there is a plan of what are we doing this circle? What is the focus for us this circle? And being able to track that as we go along with what we need to do. Okay, there's also focus on high quality work and technical skills throughout the project. So we're looking at technical excellence and good design. And that's why the review comes in, continuously as we're working. Okay, so there's a saying that the simplest solution are the ones that work usually the best. So there's simplicity. You don't want to overcomplicate what needs to be done. It has to be, simplicity has to come into what is being built. Build the skeleton first, and then start adding the bits and pieces that needs to make it usable, that needs to make it work into it. Okay, so not over complicating things unnecessarily. And then we're looking at a situation where the team are empowered, to be able to organize themselves. They have to be self-sufficient team that are working. They make the decision, they take ownership of their work to deliver the best outcome. So they are self-sufficient. They're being helped, supported, guided to get to that stage. But that is the way they were. These are one of the principles of Agile that makes it, a cutting edge out there, that makes it stand out, that makes it usable, that makes it usable to not just IT industry, but most industries out there. And then there has to be regular reflection on their work. The team has to reflect regularly on their work and their processes, making adjustments, making improvements where necessary, so that their performance is effective and is efficient. So there is no way we talk about agile approach being the approach for a project, to manage a project, without talking about the values and the principles. Bringing them in, they are the best practices of Agile, and you need to bring them in order to use Agile well and deliver the best for the customers. Okay, so quickly, we're just going to move on to look at some of the key elements of an Agile project. Okay, so these are just some, like I said, these are not just all, but these are some of the key elements of an Agile project management approach. So we look at iterative work, which I've mentioned so many times in the course of tonight. The project is broken down into smaller chunks, okay, and worked on in an iterative cycle, which is called a sprint. And that produces tangible outcomes at the end of it. So we have a sprint, it could be 1 week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 3 weeks, not more than a month. We'll plan focus, we have a goal. This is what we want to do in this project at this particular time. We plan for it, we deliver it, we show it to the customer. This is what we've done. They give feedback. Or why don't you do it? Why don't you use a better color? Just giving an example. Why don't you make that a bit smaller? We prefer if that is a bit smaller and all that. The team goes back to make those adjustments and all that, and that incremental value is added. And then there's another 2 weeks or a week, depending on the cadence they're using, and then they plan again for another goal. They focus on the goal, they plan again, and that is how they work throughout the course of that project in order to deliver it to the timeline. And no matter the circle or the sprint, they have divided the work into, it has to fit into the timeline for that project. Okay, so we'll also want to look at another key element, which is the customer collaboration, which again we've talked about. Frequent interaction with the customers, all the stakeholders, to ensure that the product meets their needs. It satisfies what they're expecting, it meets their expectation, they are happy with what is being built as it goes along. It is usable, it is working, and it is usable. And you have another key element of, excuse me, adaptability. Okay, so that is the aspect where the team is ready to adjust, to respond to change just as the feedback comes back. They are ready to adjust. It could be adjusting to a new change entirely. Okay, as a customer, I can look at what the team has built and all that and said, you know what, I want to change my mind, rather than have it that way. Why don't we change it this way and that way and that way? The team are ready to respond. The agility to respond to change is key for an agile project management. We do that plan, the change management process that are put in place, and then the feedback, the team work on the feedback to now work with what um the the customer wants. And then there is continuous improvement. In a situation where there are regular reviews, we talk about regular reviews. That's where the team demonstrates to the customer, this is what we've built. They're able to review it, give feedback, they work on it. And then there is also regular continuous reflection. The team meets to reflect, this is the process, this is how we've done that thing, how best can we progress, how best can we use the process that is in place. They put improvement plans in place, they work with the improvement plans they put in place in order to get better in what they're doing, in order to be more effective, in order to be more efficient, in what they've worked on. They're able to conduct kind of a meeting to assess what has worked, we want to continue with that. What didn't work, what do we need to do to make it work? And put those improvement plans in place in order to make it work. So these are just some key elements of an agile project management approach. So quickly, we just want to look at the phases of an agile project management approach. Okay, so we look at the initiation stage. So the phases starts with the initiation stage. That's the start of any project management. Any projects that you're managing starts with the initiation. This is where you define the project's purpose. What is the purpose for this? You identify the stakeholders, you establish the goals that needs to be in place. What is this project meant to solve? What need is it solving? You have an understanding of that idea. You have an understanding of that. You have the key players. That's why I said you identify all the stakeholders that needs to be involved. Remember, your customers are not just the only people that are the stakeholders. The stakeholders are anybody that has a vested interest in that project. So the team themselves that are building, the development team themselves, they are stakeholders to that project also, not just the customers themselves alone, but they are different key stakeholders. You need to identify them. You need to establish the goals that needs to be met in that project. So that's the initiation aspect. And then you go to the project planning itself. So the project planning itself is where you develop a plan, which includes a roadmap of how the project will be completed. You have a release plan in place. Are we going to be releasing every month? Are we going to be releasing quarterly? Are we going to be releasing at the end of every sprint? Is that the kind of release plan that is suited, to that project, depending on the need that that project is meeting? So you're able to have a release plan in place. What is the project scope? What is in scope for this project? What is out of scope for this project that we want to work on? You need to look at that. What is the timeline? Being able to divide, the work schedule, which is maybe the release or the roadmap, have a timeline on your roadmap to say, this is when we want this completed, this is when this needs to be completed. And that has to be based on the timeline of that project itself. You're looking at the budget. This is the budget we have in place. How can you manage that budget effectively so that you don't run out of budget if that is what your customer has put down for it? You manage the budget properly. What goes into human resources, what goes into tool resources and all that. You're able to manage a plan with your project very well. You need to also plan your risk management. There is no project that doesn't have a risk. You going from home to work. Let's just use that as an example of what a project is. I'm going to the office. There is a risk there. There can be train delays, there can be bus delay, the bus can have a failure on the way and all that. And you know that you plan, there is a risk you manage when you're going to the office. So you're going to start work by 9. If from your house to the office is 30 minutes, you're not going to leave home 8:30 to get to the office by now. You leave some leeway, isn't it? You might say, oh, let me just leave by 8:15, or let me leave by 8. That is you putting plan in place that anything can happen on the way. There might be, like I said, road closure, there might be road works that leads to into traffic and all that. That is you managing the risk of the unknown. from getting from home to the office, which, like I said, if we use that as a project. So even normal projects also have their own risk. You need to be able to manage the risk, identify the risk that might be in place, and be able to note them down. What are the mitigating actions that need to be put in place in order for us to, um, effectively meet that risk, mitigate that risk when it happens. So we're not saying it's gonna happen, we say it's risk. So risk is not something that it might happen. We're envisaging that it might happen. So when it comes up, have a plan already in place to be able to meet with it. Those are the planning, that you put in place. And then you have the execution stage of your project. This is the stage where you put your plan now into action. You coordinate the people, the resources to carry out the project plan that you've put in place. This is where you execute it. This is where the every team that needs to start working. The development team start working. Your stakeholders come in to review what needs to be done. You can have internal stakeholders, you can have external stakeholders, but they come in to review what needs to be done. You, as the main person, as the manager, you are also liaising with every other team that needs to work. So a project, if it has to do with, let's assume it has to do with maybe a software project, it doesn't have to do with the development team alone. So they don't just build, they test, and then it's released. There will be other departments in the organization, outside the organization, that needs to be liaised with in order for that piece of incremental value. If you're releasing maybe at the end of every sprint, at the end of every month or quarterly, there are some other department in your organization or third-party suppliers that need to come into place in order for that release to happen. You're talking about ensuring that that system you're building is secured. So you're looking at compliance with governmental regulations and all that. Those are all the teams that need to work together in the execution of that. And you monitoring and controlling that aspect of the execution also is the main part. So the execution and the monitoring and controlling aspect is at the main part of you managing the project. That doesn't mean the initiation and the planning are not important, because if you've not planned very well, execution and the monitoring and controlling aspect might be affected if good planning has not been put in place, but not on comprehensive planning that we just plan so much, but planning, a bit of planning has to start for work to start also. So the monitoring and the controlling phases is where you track the progress, you manage all the changes that might come in. Like I said, you manage the risk, mitigate the risk that might come in, ensuring that the project stays on track. In terms of the cost, you're looking at the cost, you're looking at the schedule, you're looking at the scope. Okay, so all those things you've identified during the planning and all that, this is where you ensure that everything is working to plan, everything is working, is progressing the way it should. And if it is not, what is the plan? What do we need to do? Ensuring that you call for plans on time so that it doesn't affect the timeline of the project. Okay, so that doesn't mean every project works to its timeline. When you know that, okay, so this project might not meet the timeline that has been set in place, it could be for any reason. It could be regulation change, government change some regulations that affected the project and all that. Being able to get your stakeholders on board on time to say, for this concrete reason, I would say reasonable, concrete reason why that project will not go to timeline, being able to discuss it with the stakeholders on time, make them understand, and then plan further based on that. It's also part of your project manager. So we don't think about the happy path of a project alone. You think about the unhappy path also of, okay, if this happens, that affected, this project adversely and all that, what are we going to do? What do we need to do? Everybody coming together to be able to put that plan in place is part of what the managing that project is all about. And then we look at the project closure itself. Finally, all activities have been concluded. The project has gone according to plan and delivered the final project or services or whatever it is. You'll have some activities you need to do towards the closure of that project. Also, there are documents you need to write, release notes, project closure, documents and all that needs to be put in place in order for you to say that projects are being closed. And then there are some lessons learned, meeting that needs to come to place to say, okay, so these are the things we've learned in this project, documenting that so that when you have similar projects in future, you will look at the lessons learned from a previous project and being able to use that to improve on any other one that you're going to go into. Okay, so quickly, we just want to look at the benefits of Agile project management. Again, these are just some of the benefits, not limited to just this. So we're looking at the benefit of customer satisfaction. We said it that you carry the customer along, so they're satisfied. Even before the end of the project, they are satisfied because they've been part of the journey, so to say. They've put their feedback in, you've responded to their feedback, so they are satisfied. It brings about satisfaction to them, even like I said, before the end of the project. Okay, and then there's performance visibility. There's transparency in what you're doing. Every interested party to that project has transparency of the performance of that product, that services, because they've been part of it all along. There's been collaboration with every other team. Like I said, it's not just the development team or the customer that are going to use it. There are other stakeholders involved that are seeing the visibility. So the visibility can be through the project board, the review. Also, you have some reports that either the scrum master or the project manager himself, that you provide for the stakeholders and all that. Those gives visibility and transparency to what you're doing, and that's another benefit of using the Agile approach. And then you have the reduced risk. We talked about it, that you identify some risk, you've put a mitigating plan in place because of all the meetings also, that they frequently and regularly have. They're able to mitigate the risk, plan on time, identify it early, deal with it early, so that the project can go ahead, and that reduce the risk that you're going to have in the project, which might end up being, if that has not been identified, be a roadblocker, kind of a total stoppage to the product, or delayed, the project going further, which will definitely affect the timeline. So there's reduced risk in using the Agile approach in managing a project. And then we look at quality at the end of it, because the feedback is coming in, because we're adapting to the feedback that are coming in, continuously improving. There is quality in the products that are delivered at the end of the day. So like I said, these are not just it's not limited to this, but these are just some of the few benefits of Agile. So this is where we're going to stop with the um approach, the Agile approach itself. And I'll hand over to Bola, who's going to take us into the second part of it, which is the person's aspect of the Agile project management. Thank you so much. Bola,
Well,
over to you.
thank you very much, Moji. So we're now just going to look at the person in terms of the skills. Yeah, if you can click through to all of them. So what's really, really important is really great that Moji has set the foundation of the approach. And now we're going to look at, okay, you as yourself, as an agile project manager, what skills do you need? So communication is very, very important, whether that be verbal or written communication skills. It's important that you have that, because you are going to be facilitating the teams, you're going to be communicating with different stakeholders. So communication is key. It's also important that you are able to work with a cross-functional team. So we're talking about different team members from different skill sets, from different experiences. So as an APM, you need to have that skill. Also, you need to be able to coach and mentor your team. So coaching and mentoring is extremely important. So especially if you are the one that is the agile expert within that team, you need to be able to teach and coach your team within that, and be able to support them in individual and team growth. We know we've talked about agile and what is about, and adaptability and being flexible is at the heart of that. So as an APM, you need to make sure that you are adaptable. Like you've mentioned, when things are brought to your attention short notice, are you able to quickly think on your feet and how you can kind of meet those pressures and be able to guide the team through uncertainties? And another one is to be able to be planning. So you might be as APM of many different teams. So you need to be able to plan kind of short term, also mid-term, and also long term, in terms of where your projects are coming, and seeing all the different dependencies and things that could possibly get in the way of that project. Next slide for me, please. Thank you. It is also important, linking on to being organized, you need to be able to have the skill of risk management. Risk management is extremely something that you want to keep at the heart, because you want to be able to think about the risks that could come up. How can you mitigate those risks, and what things can you put into place? Are you a problem solver? Do you have problem solving skills? Are you able to adapt? Again, I've mentioned quickly, maybe you're having complex problems. You need to be able to solve these problems and be able to make those decisions under pressure. There are many different stakeholders that you will engage with, so you need to be able to manage your holders in terms of their expectations, in terms of their engagement within the project that you are leading on. Ooh.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. It's me and my animations. Don't mind me. And you need to have really good time management skills. Time management is important because obviously we are going to be working to deadlines. And with most APM roles, you might have sprints, whether that's 2 weeks, 4 weeks. So are you able to time box your events? Are you able to have efficient planning that is in relation to your team's progress? And lastly, skills of prioritization and focus. You want to be able to manage the scopes within the project, make sure things are delivered at the most value. So yes, do you have prioritization and focus skills? So these overlaps quite nicely into some of the responsibilities. So I'm going to look at these in a little bit more detail. So there's just 10 that I've just going to look at. Not too much detail, but just give you an overview of some of the things as APM you might be responsible for. And again, these responsibilities do vary from organization to organization, vary from the different projects that you'll be working on, but just to give you an idea of maybe some of the things that you will be responsible for. So number one, you'll be responsible for maybe sprint and release planning, helping to organize a sprint, release plans, ensuring that this is in alignment with the project goals and the project timeline. So those are very, very important. Number two, define the scope and objectives. You are going to work closely with stakeholders, again, to make sure that it's clearly defined project goals and objectives. So again, you've got them more of a bigger picture approach in terms of what the scope is and objectives of the projects that you're working on. It is your responsibility to work. You could be working with stakeholders, it could be working with other members within the development team, but you are responsible for maintaining the product roadmap, ensuring that the priorities are aligned with the business objectives, and if things are coming in misalignment, you need to be able to make those changes to that roadmap. You will support the Agile team. I mentioned before the skills of coaching and mentoring. You want to make sure that you're working collaboratively with your team, that they are following the Agile principles, that we are making iterative development, and also that there is continual feedback within the team. So managing stakeholders and expectations, it's really important. It's that anybody that has an interest in your product is a stakeholder, and it's important that you will be the one kind of a primary point of contact between the different kind of stakeholders, whether they're internal, whether they're external, whether they're stakeholders within another team. You want to make sure that you are aligned, ensuring that these are aligned, and that communication is key, and risks and changes are made clear to your stakeholders. You will facilitate collaboration. So you want to ensure that there is continuous improvement, continuous communication between the different teams, such as your product owners, the development teams, and other key stakeholders, again, to ensure that everybody's aligned and everybody's on the same page and everybody knows what is going on. You are responsible for report progress. So as a APM, you want to be given regular updates to your stakeholders. It could be through presentations, it could be regular reports, and you want to kind of give them update on the progress. So progress of the development of the product or the service you're working on. You want to tell them about the key milestones, any risks. If there's delays, it's important that you're reporting this to them, and if there's any adjustments to the timeline. You want to be able to identify and mitigate risks So you need to be proactive in this. So your responsibility is to be proactive about these risks, these issues, these dependencies. This can be kept in a sort of log. It can be kept within like a summary of what's going on. And you want to try and really be able to give those mitigated strategies. What are you going to do to ensure that, okay, this risk is going to happen? What are you going to do to ensure that it doesn't have such a big impact or a delay in the development of the product? Number 9, team development. You want to support your team depending on how mature your team is in agile methodology. You want to make sure that there's team development. You want to kind of be the champion for continuous improvement, be the champion for continuous learning, and really promoting that culture within your team or the teams that you work with. And lastly, are responsible for scope and timeline management. You want to help manage changes in scope or priorities, but also at the same time, you want to make sure that you're keeping the team focused on the deliverables and what are the most important features and valuable features. Because again, everybody might have a different priority, but as you, as the APM, want to remind the team of what is the most valuable feature and stuff that, or what needs to be focused on within that particular time frame. So here is just like a little overview or snapshot of some of the tools that you may use. And again, I think I mentioned before that these are not the only tools. And again, it does depend on your organization. Some organizations prefer certain tools. So it is kind of encouraged to make sure you're aware of as many of them as possible. And you'll find that once you have an idea how one works, you are able to use the other. So I'm going to just talk about a few of the tools on the next slide and kind of explain to you, okay, yes, these are great that you can see them, but what are they actually used for? So again, with communication and collaboration, you might use Slack or Microsoft Teams. The main purpose is maybe file sharing, facilitating team communication, especially within maybe like a hybrid team. So you've got some people in the office, some people at home. So you want to be able to make sure that that constant communication and collaboration is happening. So project management could be through Jira, it could be through Trello, Azure DevOps, a way to track your tasks, the sprints, and also the overall project of the overall progress of the project. Documentation will be maybe through Google Docs, it could be Confluence. Some organizations also use SharePoint, and it's a place where you put, for example, your release plan there, you put your reports there, any documentation that is important for the success of your project, you want to put in those kind of tools. You've got time tracking, such as toggle and rescue time, so monitoring time spent on task and improve productivity. So as a APM, you want to know, okay, how long is your team spending on certain activities? Not only will that help you with this project in terms of when you're setting goals for sprints, but it will help for future projects. So when you understand, okay, your team's velocity, you understand how the pace that they work in, that will really help you kind of in your next projects as well. For diagramming, you got Lucidchart and Miro. Visual representations are very good, especially as a if your project is quite technical, you have stakeholders that are non-technical, they don't understand all the jargon, but you can use diagrams to visually represent that, to show your workflows, to show your processes. And in terms of version control, you've got Git, again, for you to manage your code changes, facilitate training amongst the developers. So these are just some, they're not all of them, but these are like I said, tools that are used as an APM. So Agile Project Manager, those is maybe the first word or the first name that you know of in terms of the role, but it's important that you're aware that sometimes companies don't necessarily call them APMs or Agile Project Managers. They come in other names as well. You might see it in LinkedIn, you might see them on JobServe. So an Agile Delivery Manager, aka an APM, an Agile Coach, an Iteration Manager, and a flow manager, and there are loads more. So I'll just encourage you to just kind of be aware of the different titles for an agile project manager. Yes, there are certain areas that maybe they might have a different focus. So for example, with delivery manager, there might be more focus on the delivery of a project or a service, whereas an agile coach, yes, you're still kind of managing all the projects, but your main focus might be in terms of coaching several teams in agile methodologies and in those kind of things as well. So just to be aware of that. And here are just some examples of an APM salary. As you can see, it does vary, and this is just an overview in terms of the average. But again, depending on how long you've been in APM or your experience, obviously you might start entry level, depending on if it's in London or outside of London. But you can see there is a range from that. So this was taken from Salary Expert. Just also to show you a comparison on the next slide. Again, it's looking at a range. So this one says in Talent Hunt that the average is around 60,000. But again, entry level could start from about 45 to 50,000, or as low as 31 £31 per hour. But again, it depends. Like I said, if you're going to entry level roles, when you're still learning and you're still developing your skills as an agile project manager, to when somebody that is more confident within the skill, has a lot of experience, has worked on lots of different types of projects, and also salary is negotiable. I always say this to people: when you're applying for jobs, yes, they advertise a certain salary range, but if you know your skill set, you know what you come with, that can always be negotiated. And again, it varies whether you are a permanent member of staff or if you're a contractor. Again, that would have an effect on your salary range. So here I just wanted to show you guys just a few certifications that always kind of help and boost your credibility, or kind of boost one of the reasons why you should be employed as an APM. So you might want to start off maybe with a certified Scrum Master. You're probably wondering, okay, why is a Scrum Master? Why is an APM? Will I need a Scrum Master certification? It's maybe a good way to start off with, to make yourself aware and understand about agility, understand about Scrum, and within that you can develop and try out more certifications. So we've got project management professional with Agile focus. You've got the PMI Agile certified practitioner, and you've got the SAFe Agilist. Again, certification is not mandatory, but I always encourage people to always develop certifications, because again, it keeps you relevant, it keeps you up to date with what's going on, and it's worth you to kind of to challenge yourself and to kind of say, okay, yes, I know this, okay, I'm not really sure about this. And again, all of this is just going to enhance your CV, make you to be more employable. And on the back of that, this will help you with your active job searching. Even as you join or you've joined this internship, whether it's 3 months or 12 months, you want to be active job searching. You want to see what's already out there. You want to see the roles that are available. You want to kind of give yourself career goals. When you know, okay, this is where you want to work towards, you have a look at the person specification, you have a look at what the roles and responsibilities are, and you can kind of use it as a skill check to say, okay, I'm not really good at this area, I need to go and learn a bit more. Again, that will link to your personal development. Please don't just rely on this internship. It's great, it's really going to help you, but there is so much knowledge out there, whether it's on YouTube, you've got videos on the prep major that you should encourage you to watch. You want to constantly to be improving yourself. I kind of encourage people to see yourself as a lifelong learner, so you can continue to develop that mindset of lifelong learning, and it's only going to make you a better APM or whatever profession you want to go into to IT. You also always want to continually develop your skill set and your knowledge. And that brings me to the end. So thank you very much, everybody. If anyone has any questions for me or for Moji, please feel free to ask.